No foreign answer, no foreign answer, no. They better watch out, yeah. Forget the
Hi, I'm Queen Bee.
And I'm Dr. E. And Vanita, this is so wonderful. This is amazing that you and I are together on this beautiful day to launch our podcast. Now, why are we doing this? Let's talk about that.
We are doing it because, first of all, we started on Facebook, just having fun, interviewing each other, interviewing you for your book, Resilience. And we got such great feedback. And as a result of that feedback, you actually came up with the idea of us starting this podcast. And because it was you, I thought it was a great idea, and that at the end of the day, we would provide information, inspiration, and have fun.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Queen V. Now, what's interesting, when we did our podcast together, people were absolutely at awe or in awe by the fact that we've known each other almost 60 years. Now, let me repeat that. Almost 60 years. What does it mean, Vanita, for us to be friends for all these years? I'll tell you, after being on Facebook a couple of times with you, my phone was blowing up. And what I mean by that, people were calling, asking, saying, you've known Queen V for 60 years. And some people said, you've known Vanita Reynolds and Vanita Burleson, and people know you from way, way, way back. They know me from way back, and they were absolutely in awe of that. Now, my question to you is this. We have something special. We have something spectacular, and that is a friendship that has lasted almost 60 years. Let's tell our listening audience and our viewing audience what it means to be friends for all these years, but more importantly, what does it mean to be a friend, a true friend?
Well, I love to call you Sissy because you're my sister, more family than friend, actually, after all these years. But what was so critical for us in becoming friends, as we both talked about numerous times, is that we grew up in such a community and a church family that cultivated friendships. And unlike a lot of young people today, we didn't have a lot of distractions. We didn't have a whole lot, well, no social media, very little television. We didn't come from families with great wealth or a lot of money. So we didn't have a lot of distractions, but what we had were each other. We were each other's playmates. And so from being little girls to teenagers, we learned how to support each other, encourage each other, fight for each other, through all facets of our lives. And that never stopped. And so I believe that that was the foundation of our great friendship, that we never started out comparing and competing. I could never be you. You could never be me. And we never had those issues. So, it was just such a wonderful time to be raised. And I believe that that was the foundation of our friendship. How about you, Dr. E? What do you think?
Well, it goes back to, we were 5 years old. My family was introduced to your family in church, and you just became a part of my life from that time. But what's really important, as you mentioned before, that foundation, and that's going to church. I remember having slumber parties at the church, and it's like, okay, we're having slumber parties at a church. Well, it was all about Bible study. It was all about having fun with each other. And we didn't have a lot of toys and a lot of extracurricular things, but we definitely had a solid relationship in Christ. And we were taught as little girls how to really love and honor and to really respect friendship. And what I love about you, Sissy, is that we've honored and we've loved each other for all these years. And never once in our lives have we had any discourse with each other. And I know that sounds strange, but that's our reality. And I absolutely love that. And that gets me into this. I know that there has to be a favorite story, a childhood story that you could tell our listening audience about what we used to do. But make sure you tell those stories in a way that it's not going to embarrass me, okay?
Okay, well, it's hard not to tell embarrassing stories, but honestly, there are so many, but I will tell this favorite story. When we were adolescents, probably maybe 13, 14, and the only boys we really knew, I guess, were the boys at school and the boys at church. Well, I had a little boy, neighborhood guy that I loved. I just thought he was the cutest thing. His name was Lamont, and he was in walking distance of our favorite godmother, so to speak, from church, Mama Katie.
Right.
So if I had a little boyfriend, and I don't know that he ever even asked me to be his girlfriend, but I determined he was going to be my boyfriend, he became all of our boyfriends. So when we would walk over to his house, which was just like I said, walking distance, and sit on the porch and visit him, all of us would go together.
Yeah, we had our own little gang, like five girls getting together and saying, "Oh, Benita has a boyfriend, so now we all have a boyfriend." Queen V, I absolutely love the innocence of the times in which we grew up. We shared everything, even our first boyfriends. And hey, everybody, there was no touching, there was no kissing, there was no nothing. It was all in our minds. We had a boyfriend, and we were happy because we thought we found that boyfriend. And thanks to you, Queen V, you made it possible for all of us to have our first love. Thank you very much.
Well, I think he may have voted himself off the island, Cincy, but I determined that he was my boyfriend. I don't know if he ever determined that I was his girlfriend, but he ended up having about 4 or 5 girlfriends because we all just went over there together. But though that was the sweetness of those times, Now I know that you remember the little basement parties that we would try to have at Mama Katie's. Can you go into that? Do you remember those stories?
I remember that the times we'd have our first little parties. But first of all, let me tell everybody who Mama Katie is. You keep referring to her. Mama Katie was a woman in the church that did not have any children of her own. However, she loved all of us. She loved all the children in the church. And she happened to just, hone in on your family and my family and a couple other families, and had the girls come to her house, and we got to play at her house all the time. Now, this started back when we were 5 years old, and we grew up with Mama Katie and other people in the church. But back to Mama Katie, by the time we were in our teens, she says, "Oh, we'll let you have a party in the basement." And so in the basement, we'd turn off all of the lights, and then we would have a little strobe light going. It wasn't a real strobe light, but we made our own little strobe light. And then we would just play the Michael Jackson hits and everything else. And everybody knows about the little house parties, but our house party always consisted of the same 5 people. And so it was just wonderful that we had those nice, wonderful, innocent moments. And Queen V, when I think about it, we grew up with such a richness, such a joy, that we had parents that really loved us. We had your parents would always call me out if there was something I was doing at your house or whatever it is. They would always, I remember your mom would say, "Now, girls." She'd always have that soft voice. Now, I always thought you had the nicest mother in the world. It's like, "Now, girls." But the way she looked at us, we knew we had to get serious and do what we're supposed to do, whether it's, whatever we were doing. Usually it was things centered around the church. And the only thing I can say, Queen V, here we are all these years later. We have such an amazing foundation. And here we are today. Let's talk about what happened after we grew up and we went on to college and got our careers. Let's briefly just share with our audience who we are as of today, is because our past has made our presence possible.
Well, yes, absolutely, sis. And this is something that is interesting and funny for our viewers to know and our listeners to know, is that you are 19 days older than I am. So you were always kind of the torchbearer for our group, in a sense. And in that sense, you moved to California shortly before I did, but it wasn't long for me to follow after you to California. And I remember early on that you were trying to convince me to move up, to Northern California instead of Southern California. And I was considering it because, hey, my sissy was up there until I spent a July the 4th on San Francisco Bay. And it was freezing. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, I could be in Denver if I wanted to be this cold. And so that's kind of a funny story. But of course, we both have our careers. You became a doctor, tenured professor at San Jose State, doing amazing things all these years. I had a nursing career that I retired from in Southern California, taking care of catastrophically injured children primarily. And it's just been a hoot and a toot. I know we have so many stories around our careers, but God has just blessed us. And through it all, we've always remained in touch with each other and kept up with each other and supported each other. And so what do you think about where we are today, Dr. E?
Well, I'll say this, Queen V, we have the audacity to believe when we were just little girls that nothing can stop us from doing what God has planned for us to do. We have the audacity to believe that these little girls in the church, these little girls singing in the choir, could someday be what they set out to be. Now, you chose a nursing career. I chose a teaching career. And with that teaching career, I chose it when I was 5 years old. And I knew, because I'll tell you, you say I was 19 days older than you. Well, I take it seriously. It's like, okay, so if I'm 19 days older than you, I have to be able to lead you down the right path. But, when you're little, you just think that, a year really matters, days really matters, Christmas really, really matters because it comes one time a year, but that year seemed like forever. Now I can take the 19 days and say, no, Queen V, you can have the 19 days back. Christmas comes multiple times during the year. As a matter of fact, it's come so often, I don't even want to think about it. But I can say this, through all the seasons that we have experienced in our lives, I can only say how blessed we are. You had a 40-year nursing career. To be able to have a job or a career that's lasted so long, like 40 years, and I've been in academia for 37 years. There's something about the foundation that put us in the right path to stay, to have the stick-to-itiveness to our careers. What do you think that is, Queen V?
Well, I think that we grew up under the mentorship of our parents, of course. I remember both of your parents, both incredible, stellar people, but they, had stick-to-itiveness. They taught us that, you don't run away from problems. Just because something's not working out, you have the audacity to believe that you can solve it, that you can figure it out. And also, we grew up under the tradition of the whole civil rights movement and of our church family and our relationship with Christ, that you give back, that life is about more than just you. You're here for a purpose. And so I think that was the huge foundation of our careers and of our lives, that it's always been about more than just us.
Well, Queen V, you're speaking the truth. And speaking of that, do you remember when we saw Dr. Martin Luther King coming to Macedonia Baptist Church and all the hoopla around Dr. Martin Luther King coming? And I just remember that my father was a deacon in the church at the time, and it was a real big deal for him to pick Dr. Martin Luther King up at the airport. Well, let's talk about that as little girls. And I only thing I wanted to do is play with his kids. I did not have any concept of the magnitude of Martin Luther King coming to our church. Can you speak on that? Do you remember that actually?
Oh, Marilyn, how well I remember that. And let me tell you this funny story. It has haunted me all of these years, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. coming to Macedonia. because my parents talked about him a lot at the dinner table. So I really had a concept of the magnitude of the man. But what happened at the church has haunted me for forever, and I'll tell you why. There was a moment in time, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a very short man, actually. I was surprised, even as a little girl, I thought, wow, he's so short. But there was a moment in time where he was drinking at the water fountain. You know where that water fountain is?
It's
by the
still there.
women's restroom.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to the restroom, and there were only the two of us in the hall. Whoa. And I just stopped. I was just in shock, but I wanted to tell him something. And I could not make myself say a single word, Sissy. And all these years, I felt like there was something I wanted to tell him. So I had to research the article, and I found it actually of him coming to the church. And what I think I wanted to tell him was the day that he came was my 7th birthday. I think I wanted to tell him it was my birthday. And so that's kind of a funny thing. I just found that out recently in the last year or so, that I think that's what I wanted to say. But I couldn't force myself to say a single thing, and I never did. And so
well, I'll tell you, that's an incredible story. But you know, we have tons and tons of stories going to National Baptist conventions through the church, going to Selma, Alabama, and doing ministries through the church. And here we are, little girls, and we got a chance to see all of these wonderful, great people that would someday we would grow to understand the magnitude of who they are and what they fought for and what they believed in. And I am so thankful that you have a ministry yourself, and that is the Reclaims Jeans, and also the Queen's Champions. If you could just speak briefly on what that is, because I believe that what you're doing, Queen V, is a piece of, or it really fits into what we, the foundational pieces that we have been, that we are off, that we are, that we're our springboard. That's where I'm coming from. The springboard. It's the foundation that was set a long, long time ago, and what you're doing with your life, with your ministries. And so, if you could speak about that, because I think it's so important for people to know why we call you Queen V. That just didn't happen. I just didn't make it up, but there is a reason behind the name. So can you please share with our audience what that is all about?
Oh, Dr. E, my honor. Well, Queen V has come from the ministry I founded 6 years ago, Reclaim Queens in Blue Jeans Ministries, which is a vision manifestation ministry. And what it became was a life-giving ministry to others. But what it was for me from the onset was a life-saving ministry. Had I not started the ministry, I don't believe I would be here today, because I was in the throes of depression and being a new widow, suddenly widowed, and all of the stark realities and the depression and the despondency that came from that. And the only way that I could pull myself up from the pit, or that I should say that the Lord pulled me up from the pit, was to write out my heartaches and my thoughts and prayers and aspirations and everything else on the page. And I started sharing that. That became a group. It developed into more. People were yearning for more, asking for more. And that's what the Lord used to bring me out of the pit of depression. And in serving others, it really saved me. And now the 5 a.m. Queen Champions Club is a further iteration of the Reclaim Queens in Blue Jeans ministry. We are a small group that meets at 5 a.m. and our whole mission is growth trajectory. We are in the growth cycle of being the clearest, nearest, dearest, most authentic version of who God called us to be. And we know that that requires personal development. And so that's what we're all about.
Well, I tell you, Queen V, I love your ministries and your Reclaim Queens. There's more than 1,900 followers. You have yourself an army of people behind you that really support you. And let me just say this, your Queen's Champions page, you are the only person on earth that can get me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And not because you're my sissy, Queen V, it's because you have so much to say and offer. And I tell you, when you first approached me about the 5 a.m., my first thing is like, what do you mean 5 a.m.? I think you mean 5 p.m. because I am a night person, not a day person, let alone a morning person. And when you said 5 a.m., my first reaction was, oh, I can't do it, but sorry, I'll catch you next time. But when you told me the story behind you creating the 5 a.m. Queen's Champions, I listened to your story and I said, I'm going to join you and I'll do it for 2 weeks. And here it is, almost 6 months in. I'm still getting up 5 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. It's because what you have to say is so wonderful, is spiritual. It gets my day started. And it reminds me that audacity to believe is something that we all need in this world. If you look around in the world and you see the way it is, I tell you, it just seems that there's no hope. But you give people hope, Queen V, with your wonderful words of encouragement. And I can see right now that you've used what you've been blessed with and what's helped you get out of whatever you said you were going through in prior years. It's helped you to develop, and you're sharing these secrets with so many other people. God bless you, Queen V. I love you so much. And let me tell you, because we're friends, it's more than just a Facebook friend. I want everyone to know it's not like a Facebook friend or someone that tells you that they're your friend because they're calling you a friend. It's important to understand that there are transactional friends. They're your friends as long as they can get something from you. And let me tell you this, Queen V has been trying to get me to be a part of her, integral part of her Queen's ministry for a long, long time, because she has queens all over the United States doing something every single day. And these queens aren't playing. They're out there doing stuff. And Queen V would always ask me to, consider doing something on a week-to-week basis. And I've been kind of pushing her off. I've pushed her off for 6 years. But you know what? A true friend is going to honor whatever it is you want to do or doesn't want to do. And so that gives you an idea what a true friend is. She never, ever said, well, gee, you should do this for me, because she's never gone there. But one thing that is accurate, I've always been there. I never left. I've been, you could say, a sideline person watching and following and commenting on everything that she does. But in terms of rolling up my sleeves to do the work, she's done all this incredible work on her own. And then she has so many other queens that chimed in to support her. So I just want to make it very clear what a true friend is. And in you, Queen V, you're a true friend. And I am so thankful for that. So with that said, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap this session up?
I have to give my final adieu to you, Sissy, because what people would be most surprised to find out, I think, about you, because you have great accomplishments. You have been the only female tenured professor in your department for decades. And I know that that's not a point of pride for you, because you believe and are bringing on and want to encourage more, and you have done that throughout your career. But you are stellar and you are world class. But what people would want to know about you, and that would surprise them, is what an humble person you are, and what a true friend you are. There has never been a single point with anything I have ever done, be a book author, be it, the founder of Reclaim Queens, whatever I was doing, you were always my greatest cheerleader. You had not 1 ounce not 1 ounce of resentment, jealousy, envy, nothing like that. You have always, always, always supported me and encouraged me. And I thank you for that. That is a sign of a true, true, true friend. And you have always been that to me.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to just clarify one thing. The only Black professor, Black female professor well, it's been like that for 37 years. That's going to be an episode one day. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
But I do
we'll talk about that
for bringing that out, and I do appreciate what you have said. I'm completely humbled by your wonderful, encouraging words. So, Queen V, what can our wonderful listening audience expect from our podcast? Now, everybody, this is new. We're just now getting started. And so we're just kind of letting you know who we are, why we're doing what we're doing, our relationship as friends, the Audacity to Believe a platform that we are now, we've launched it. So what can they expect in the future from us?
They can expect to hear more and more and more great stories, because life is made up of stories. These will be actual true stories and accounts, not only of our lives and experiences, but those of others that had the audacity to believe. It is amazing what God will do through a life that has the audacity to believe. And so that's what we want to impart to all of our viewers and listeners, that they too can have greatness beyond themselves when they have the audacity to believe.
With that, thank you for listening in, and we hope to see you next time. Stay tuned. A to B, we're coming at you, and that's Audacity to Believe. See you later.
Bye-bye.
They better watch out, yeah. Forget the things that they say. Look out, babe, look out. You got it.